Have the mics going and the camera rolling. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the residents who decided to come participate tonight for being here. As far as roll call goes, we're missing Bob, Matt, and Debbie. So, guess public comments on the agenda items. Anybody out there have a comment or suggestion on what we're going to be covering?
What's the agenda?
There's a copy down there on the table.
It's just, there's no all businesses on one.
Correct.
Yeah, I have a comment. The last planning meeting, topic of the 21st Century Run to Homes Act. That's the federal government issue. I brought that up. And also, Pennsylvania has a Affordable Housing Act, which is a little bit different. But I think that's the main thing. They want to cut the red tape for developers and home builders, is what I got out of it. And I'm still waiting for a response from two senators, and Mike Kelly and Aaron Bernstein. But with the state Affordability Act, from what I gathered, they want to redo the municipal code to make, I guess it has something to do with the red tape act. I did speak with Aaron Bernstein's office the other day, and one of the representatives, or Tyler, he was pretty good. I asked him about that, and he brought up an interesting aspect of how these bills get passed and written. And they're written to go to be challenged in court. So they're relying on the courts to determine how these bills and municipality codes are run. And so I'm not sure if you're going to look into that. Dave, I recommend calling Bernstein's office and at least ask him some questions on this. It sounds like he might be interested in coming up and discussing with you or with the committee, or maybe on the phone, you guys could work something out. So I think that covers the agenda issue. I think I wanted to bring up.
So basically what I'm hearing you say is that Bernstein's office is aware of this PA Affordability Housing Act and what impacts that may have on some of the municipal codes, maybe the municipal planning code, which is a statewide.
It's the Pennsylvania Affordable Housing Act of December 18, 1992. And so that's what they're going on. But they want to work in partnership with private and nonprofit entities here in the private, with the private sector. What I think what bothers me, once they isolate the developers and home builders, I'm trying to find out if they're presenting with incentives to actually do this work. And so I'm trying to get clarification on that. And so
Tom,
when you read these bills, it's kind of too much technical.
have they voted on any of this in the state senate, you know?
I don't believe so.
The 21st century one isn't a law yet.
But it was voted on?
By the Senate. First it was voted on by the House, and then it went to the Senate. They voted on something, so now it just has to go back to the House. So Mike Kelly's going to get back to me on what we're doing here. It's nice you want to do that. Everything comes into play to making the homes affordable, cost-wise. And they bring up first-time home buyers. Things went up here. But when they do these bills, it kind of forget about you and me, what we're gonna get out of it. I think I asked that also. I mean, I don't mind helping people, but how many people, are gonna go in here? One interesting aspect from, Tarsing's office, Tyler says, oh, people are falling through the cracks. Well, the cracks are getting larger, so more and more people are falling through, but is it necessary? So these are things that have to be questioned on this. And I think at the last meeting too, I brought up the homeowners associations. There are many governments within the township. So I don't know if we should be concerned with it. I mean, they're gonna take care of what they want to do. It's a government within a government. President, vice president, 5-member boards, architectural committees, all this stuff that goes on. And I've never been to one of their meetings or anything to see how that goes, but I don't know how much of a concern that should be with the township.
I feel like with the homeowners associations, I'm gonna deal with this in real estate quite a bit. Like, they are a mini government, but they don't go against anything the municipality has. If anything, they further restrict things where at that point, I mean, there's always, it's optional. Like, anyone who decides to buy a house in a homeowners association has to be provided the documents, so they have an automatic 5-day period to get out of the contract if they don't like what's in it. So there's that built-in protection, but as far as what they can restrict is, you know, okay, you gotta have a red door or a black door, like, that's kind of up to the people who decide to live there if they wanna deal with that or not, so.
Right, they have procedures to
Yeah,
handle these complaints.
yeah.
Again, the Seneca Hills down here off of 79 has 147-page bylaw home rules, regulations on it. And even in it, one of the declarations, it says that if you're a home buyer, please read this. That's 147 pages of information. I guess another thing, once these people get into the homeowners association, if they can't remedy things through the association, does it come back to the township and they petition the township to help remedy a lot of things? But anyway, these are things I brought up, and I thought there might be a concern with the federal government and the state government trying to rewrite the municipal code and make things easier for developments to come through.
So is it it sounds like the federal government is further along passing the bill than the state?
Well, the federal government says that they don't want to get involved with the municipal codes, and that's where Pennsylvania is getting involved with it.
Superior is trying, I don't remember the bill or anything, trying to make a generic municipal code across the state.
Yeah,
Zoning,
the Superior's trying to do all that.
all the way down to municipal code.
So, one more question. When you're redoing these ordinances, and I know you're trying to get the wording right. Once you get it to where you like it, is it going to go to a professional person who can read this and actually put either better wording or delete the information, or is it just a?
Once we're finished with it, my understanding is we send it to the solicitor and their legal team goes through it and makes sure that we're in compliance with legal standards, with that the definitions are legally correct and
Right.
coincide with what else is in other ordinances.
I think you want to try to avoid being challenged by the developers in that. So I think wording has to be pretty accurate on that.
Tom, is that correct? That's basically, they are the clearinghouse for our technical editing and legal editing.
Cool.
Okay.
Because you don't want to leave it up to the courts and be threatened with a lawsuit. Okay. All right, we're good. I remember, I think when the committee was first started, I think even in the comprehensive plan, you were looking at permitted uses and various conditional uses. I don't know how that's working out, if you're trying to get more things permitted instead of going through a variance or a conditional use aspect.
I think our approach was to try and limit the variances. You know, if things were fuzzy and we said, well, they can always ask for a variance, I know this group has talked about trying to better define it so the variance it doesn't always push everything to a variance, because that just, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road and you're pushing that on to decisions by the supervisors.
Right. And I know we're talking about developments and things like that, but it still affects the residents here, so as long as they're fair across the board.
Well, I think the only time we really skew towards variances were if we want to protect something, so we put in, hey, this is going to be, projected, and if there is an exception, that's when the variance could be used. I think that's really the only time that I've felt, since I've been involved, we really looked at variances was in a case where we wanted to make sure something wasn't going to happen, so we said it couldn't, and we knew there might be an exception here or there, so that's what we allowed for variances.
Everything can't keep going to the conditional use.
Yeah. But the point is, you can't, if you exclude everything right off the bat and make it so exclusive that it's going to get challenged because it's too exclusive, then that's the other side of it. So we're trying to balance both of those things, I think. So.
I agree.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Mike?
I'm just gonna ask you, are you gonna address the issue about, Egress, number change?
That's on our list, because I got to hear this too.
From what was originally, I heard this group number.
That's what I'm curious to find out too.
Trying to figure out what happened, why it happened.
Before we move to that, Tony, you had mentioned talking to Bernstein's office. You said they were interested in coming to talk to us.
It sounded like Tyler. He's a young guy, but he's retired. He's in the banking business. He was talking. He's not happy the way these bills are going through.
If you wanna talk to Aaron, email Aaron, he will reply.
Yeah, you can email Aaron.
It's on his, Aaron's website, you go to Aaron Bernstein.
I think it's easier to get in touch with Aaron than.
Yeah, his email address is there, just email, he will reply back.
Yeah. So that would be the protocol. We ask him. He may send someone else in his place.
100%.
Right.
Or he'll have somebody else reply. He will reply, which is really good. So email him, he'll generally refer you to someone else. And you'll have to run over it. But if you try calling the office or him, you have his number. He doesn't answer.
Okay.
Try Doctor.
Pardon me?
Try Doctor.
Yeah, when he wants something, he calls you. Hey, he's a busy guy. I give him credit.
The other thing I was thinking about, because it's hard for us planning ahead. We know we're not going to get development unless we have sewage lines. And, my thought was either we go to the Western Butler Sanitation, whatever it is, WBC, whatever, or we ask them to come here. And since it's a, public meeting, maybe we have to have them come here. In any other townships, have they come and presented what their 10-year plan is, what their comprehensive plan is for the area? Surely they're looking at expanding, and they know we need that. But I don't know what they do versus what we do versus what the developers are responsible for. And I would like to hear that from them. Do they do that at all?
So we have a plan from them that shows what projects were denoted or potentially in the township. We did their 537 plan, which is the sewage facility plan for the township. They presented a plan of potential developments. Their policy has been that they don't extend sewers, developers extend sewers. So that has been their policy in the past. If you you want, I can dig that plan out, because it's a graphic map with details of what potentials there were, and I can share that with you, and so you at least have an idea of what their thought process was with potential development. Either somebody maybe did a concept review and said, hey, what about this or that? So they identified properties, potential lots, stuff like that, but there were no like sewer extensions or moving map to get that.
So my question is then, when they're doing that, is it a concept plan where they would say, okay, here are, these would be reasonable alignments to run a, trunk line up Scholars Run, a Little Creek, certain areas that just would make sense versus, well, we want to get sewage up to, this high mountain, and the only way to do that's some crazy type of alignment. I mean, what do they look at? What would make sense?
Generally, they look at following streams to get the most flow, and the watershed then drains to that stream, so you pick up everybody in that watershed.
So their concept would be mainly following some of the existing perennial
Correct.
streams and valleys.
So from like Log Cabin, they ran the sewer up to essentially behind their property along Scholars Run. So any future development generally follow that same route and go on that side of the stream and continue on. And then there may be pump stations that flow into that because of terrain.
Mm-hmm.
They're generally looking at capacity. They're trying to do a predictive capacity analysis based on projected growth and how much capacity they have in their system and what their future expansion may possibly look like.
And do you know what the basis of their projected growth is?
I'd be
I'll
curious.
email that to you right now. It's
Okay.
Act 537 document, if anybody else wants it. Like Tommy says, it does have a map. It's just a concept. And it bases on, what do they call it? It means households.
It's the equivalent.
Yeah,
Well, even an EDU.
Yeah,
What they base it on.
yes. So that's what they base it on. And it's actually mapped broken down by property owners and everything. So it's a big document, but there's a lot of information there. I'll forward it to you if anybody else wants it. It is,
I'd like to see it.
it's pretty comprehensive, but yes, yeah, it is what the map.
Send it to me. I'll share it with
Yes,
the BCom. Okay. Thanks.
Thing too, a few years ago, the WBCA or whatever they're called, was constantly here at our supervisors meetings and stuff, talking about how they were almost at full capacity. They need to expand. I don't know where it stands at this point. I haven't been able to get answers. I got some inside connections and nobody's given me answers, whether they're permitted to or not. I don't know. But with the way Jackson Township is, and they're exploding, I don't know how, and then you're throwing in this artificial 124 and I just don't know how. You've got houses are being built. How it's gonna be able to handle it.
Where is their plant, Tom? Do you know?
It's in Zillionople by the self-storage off of Beaver Road, Beaver Street.
Mm-hmm. Has it been updated recently?
They just built a new administrative building in the process of doing more of expansion with their treatment plant. So
Okay.
that is in the works.
And are you aware of any constraints or excess capacity basically what they're pitching right now?
They have excess capacity that would be noted in the 537 plan. They also have a plan for an upgrade that they're working on. They'll handle additional. That's what this map, these EDUs forecast or trends forward what that is, so they have capacity to serve.
Did the property owners decide to be part of that?
Well, they just put a line on a map and identify what property that is. It could, you know.
If somebody would have, either they felt the property was able to be developed, or maybe somebody presented a concept plan, so, the property owners may not even know that that exists.
That they're even part of it?
Right.
Okay.
And yeah, my guess is that's their concept plan, but developer comes in and wants to come in from a different direction and miss that alignment completely, but has his own alignment. They're probably not gonna say no.
Correct. Depends on where the developer is, so.
How, the other question, just because I'm curious on how this all 19 corridors going to lay out, but you know, if a developer comes in and puts in 5 miles of sewer line to get to the development that he wants to put in, there's a lot of tracks between 0 and 5 miles that can be developed. When they want to tap into that sewer, does he get any money back from his initial investment?
For the first 10 years, he's able to recoup some of his funds. After 10 years, they cannot. That's state law.
Because that's what I always thought is somehow or another, if he's going to make that investment, that line almost becomes his, right?
Oh, it does. He builds it to the authority standard. He gives it to the authority, and then for 10 years, if somebody connects to it, he gets a prorated portion of that.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, just curious on how that worked because it's 10 years. Okay. All right. Well, I would like to move on. The thing we need to talk about tonight is the egress ordinance. I wasn't here at the last meeting. I was sick. I didn't want to spread my germs over to everybody. I guess it went through fairly well, but there was a discussion on the number of homes that we were going to use for whether or not, you know, what was that magic number. We had talked as a planning commission, and I thought we voted on 40, and we were all here that evening. But it sounds like that's changed. And did that change due to statutes? Did that change due to legalities? Did that change due to opinions? Or what happened? I just wasn't here.
So the bulk of the meeting was going over the changes we had before, and I think everybody was in agreement to those changes. Then it came down to what number to put in. And the question was, if you put 40 in, is how do you substantiate that so you're not challenged? So the question as we sort of hemmed and hawed around that was, at the end of the day, what do we have as a basis to support 40 as the limitation for one access versus two accesses? So what we looked at was the International Fire Code mandates that if you have more than 100 homes on a roadway, unless it's sprinkled, then you need a secondary access for fire protection. So to me, that's a really good example of the ceiling as far as you don't want to go over 100. And if it's sprinkled, then they allow up to 200. But that is something that's been in the fire code for a while, and it's supported. So then the other question was, can we get that number lower? Is there something that you can do to substantiate a code or some jurisdiction that says this is what that number needs to be? So circling back, I guess the question is, why is there a limitation? So to me, you want to have a limitation because of safety issues. You know, if you can't get emergency vehicles back because the road is blocked, something along those lines, to me, the safety then, to me, would default to the fire code because they're the only ones that have a code that says something as far as number of cars on a particular roadway. We looked at some other ordinances, and Michelle had mentioned that some of her clients are actually beefing their numbers up because it wasn't substantiated and there were issues and challenges. But some of the other ordinances we found more or less go back to say we're allowing so many cars on a type of roadway. So they define the roadway and then they limit it to the number of vehicles per day, and that way whatever the use is would dictate the number of vehicles. So if you have, you know, residential subdivision that's all homes, then the code would say you're allowed 10 trips per day per house, so you can work out the math and say, to meet this number, you're allowed so many homes, and townhomes will be a little bit greater because they don't have as many trips. If you had a Walmart, I mean, those are all defined uses that have a trip generation associated with them, so you can define it. But there isn't anything in the regs that say this many trips works 2 accesses or 3 accesses, multiple accesses. So that's the downside of that, is there really isn't something that dictates that. So that's where I think Jewel and Dale were here, but I think that's where the planning commission was, is we don't want to put a number in just to have a number in that meets our needs, and then the first person challenges it and you lose, and all of a sudden you don't have a number, or you have a number that some judge says, you know, it's just inadequate and throws it out. So you want to be able to hang your hat on something. So essentially, I think that's where we're at. So.
And it's sort of like what Tony said, we don't want to have ordinances where we're going to get challenge and leave it up to the court. So that's why, I think Bob brought up that of all the developments he's had, 40 would be a very low number with the ingress and egress.
Mike?
Yeah, a couple of questions on that. I know somebody that was developing homes with Bob, and he's actually the one that gave me the Jackson Township ordinance that says theirs is limited to 50 of us. Adams Township has something very similar to what's on the state, where it's average daily trips. So it's more than 800 average daily trips, it has to have a second entrance. The more important thing is, though, I guess, is two things. One, the legal precedence argument. Rule number 13, never ever involve a lawyer. So we'll point to that direction, but every single one of our zoning districts, our ordinances right now has a limit of 20 homes on a cul-de-sac. So tell me what the difference is with a cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sac's literally defined as a single ingress egress with no other, I mean, there's more to the definition, but so I don't think we've ever been challenged on that. And I would see that would be pretty much the same thing. But on the flip side, we also have had for the last 30 years where you can't have more than 2 homes on private land for safety reasons. Meaning, you could have a 100-acre farm and you can put a 50-foot wide road in, but you're not allowed to have more than 2 homes on it. So, what is the reason behind that question?
Well, I think part of it is like we haven't challenged before because we haven't had that many developments come in here, and that's going to change. We're going to start having people come in here and want to have these developments, and that's going to bring up challenges along the way. And I think we just want to make sure that we're looking towards the future where we're not going to have such a small number that we don't have reason to back it up and then saying that's what it used to be. Like that's not going to work. So that's, I think that was the whole point. We want to make sure we have a logical explanation as to, okay, it is the fire code, it is what the transportation department says is recommended for daily trips and all that kind of stuff. So we just want to solidify that number on whatever the number is. It could be 40, but we just want to have some background behind that to say it was, as opposed to just saying 40, which was the number we picked. So our last number, we need some data to back this up. And whatever the number is, like, I don't care if it's 30, if that's the data that's behind it, then we have some support if we are challenging for it.
I think a lot of the ordinances you're putting together, you make that same argument. And you can't have a definitive number to back it. So you got to do what you guys feel is safe.
Well, you can hear if it's backed by data, you can have a definitive number.
No, I'm saying it's other.
Because there's no reason you're going to, if there's a reason to have it. So.
I'd like to take several steps back. So the planning commission was tasked with putting together this ordinance in a hurry, right? And we're trying to push this out ahead of all of our other changes, which this direction came from the supervisors. So what was the driving force that you wanted this so urgently so that we can address it in this language? Was it the fire code and emergency access? Was it the actual trips and people trying to get out from one exit?
I think it's safety is the issue. Safety. It was brought up to us by, actually, the fellow developer, Bob Brennan, brought it up to me and he said, it's appalling that you have that many homes on a single ingress egress. It's another developer who brought this up. He said, that is an absolute danger. He said, I can't believe Lancaster Township allows that. So I said, how do you have anything that prevents it? He goes, absolutely. Here's the ordinance from Jackson Township. Here's the ordinance from Adams Township. It seems that Jackson now has removed that from their ordinances, but it was there actually. The Adams is still there. So that's how, it is, I think it is a safety issue. I lived on a single ingress for a long time. I was actually trapped in my neighborhood. It was a long community. Truck broke down, actually broken. 400 people were trapped in the neighborhood. There's nothing to do. So it was just, that was at least my initiative.
Why did Jackson Township drop theirs?
I didn't even know until it was brought to my attention. I had, the Jackson Township ordinance is what you guys reviewed and voted on back in November. That was the ordinance. Theirs actually had a provision for a second entrance that was, I don't know what it was, it was like a maintained right of way or something. And that you guys voted to take that out.
Well, I don't know, maybe I don't understand your question. I think I understand your question, but like, what was the urgency to put this above everything else? Was there a pressing need that had to be addressed right now?
Well,
We're saying, can we word the language to address the concern? Is it the fire access, or is it how many people are trying to get in and out at one time, and how many people could be trapped, or like, what is it
Well,
that?
in a nutshell, to get to it is what's happening right now. Obviously, we can't change that, but we can prevent
we can protect ourselves and whoever, if the Nussbaum development ever comes about.
Well, you can't point to protect.
Cause I know, that's a
Up to
thing.
So the bottom line, yeah, the bottom line of discussion was, we know that the Saldo, the PRD, and the zoning are all gonna have to be released in concert, okay? They all have to be done at the same time, because otherwise there's gonna be conflicts between them. That could take us a good another year or so. And in the meanwhile, we could have somebody else pushing in, requests for developments, submitting concept plans, whatever. They could, so if we're serious about preventing what happened at Wrigley, preventing that from happening again, and this was a 1 or 2 meeting, even a 3 meeting discussion to get a new ordinance in place, we've just bought ourselves a lot of time, because that's one of the biggest concerns that I've heard. So that was why I think we initiated that as kind of a, let's jump this up. And the data centers is another one. I mean, these are things that that potentially could happen before we finish our 3 documents. And, we're trying to, we don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, so to speak, where we're trying to get this big comprehensive document, and in the meanwhile, all these people are coming in under the fence and we can't stop them. So I think if there's certain things we want, we should prioritize those above and beyond us redoing all the ordinances.
The data center thing is a shock. I don't see that we're a big place for a data center, but I mean, we have 15 of them going in Pennsylvania right now.
I was just telling Dave about the one that was creating right outside Scranton. Town's only, barely has 7,000 people. We're gonna put 51 data centers in on 6 campuses.
So for me in the data centers, and I don't know if anybody else shares this, we should at least have something. It doesn't have to be totally comprehensive, but at least right now there's no limits to it. And that makes us a big target, because there's nothing that stops them. If we have something that just makes sense, it may not be 100% bulletproof, but at least it's a constraint that 4 other townships surrounding us don't have. They won't come here unless it's really attractive to them. So.
You have to have a data center. Right now we don't. So we could technically argue, we're going to buy Mel property, Tim and Coffey's property, and Dale's property, and we're going to put a data center out there. And they got water from Scully Run, they got power to get from the fracking supply over to Garland Hampshire, flats up against Dale's property, and there you go. I mean, if I was a data center guy, that's what I'd do. I'd put it right up on those covers.
So how many acres do they typically want?
Well, depends how much they get. But yeah. So the one on the road was a small one, so it fits in the industrial. Don't take as much as they can get.
Because I was down in Indiana County 2 weeks ago, and apparently they're coming in there and buying lots of farm ground for lots of money, and that's what it's for.
I don't blame Darla. She said, $50 million, so they can have access to the natural gas. Your place, $100 million, and they're gonna buy.
Well, that's what the guy down in Indiana County, he said it was crazy money they're paying. Anyhow.
You gotta at least have something. I agree. Even if it's just say, hey, listen, it's gotta go to the industrial area. Come on, something.
So, again, this is all learning experience for a lot of us, but I do have a legal question I'm going to ask our solicitor. So, we have this whole process. We have to have public meetings, we have to generate ordinances, we have to submit them for public comment and review, we have public meetings with court reporters who take notes, and the township supervisors decide 50 is the number. If it's greater than 50 we want 2 entrances. How does that get challenged? I mean, we've gone through this. We just didn't write it in there and slip it in. How can they challenge that? If that is a law, basically, that our township has put together, we have the authority to put those laws together. We've followed all the processes, all the steps that are required. How do they come in and say, we're going to challenge that in court, and the judge is going to make us change our number?
Well, I think this planning commission really does think things through. Some just sort of push their ordinance through. They may just pick a random number, not like Tom said, we looked at the fire code, we looked at this and that. So you have a justifiable reason based on these health, safety, welfare concerns as to why you're picking that. But some of the case law are based on them just essentially picking one. And some of them, what ended up happening is maybe they had 20 homes in one of the cases I saw. It gets challenged on a variance or a request for conditional use depending on the ordinance. And then they can't justify why they won't give additional units to a developer. And so they don't have a reasonable basis for it, they don't have any other underlying data and safety information. And for those reasons, they may get overturned or remanded for their findings on what would be appropriate. So I think if you do, like you said, you lay everything out the right way, then you protect yourself. And you can really substantiate, this is the number, here's how we got there, here's the objective criteria we use, and it would probably uphold. I wouldn't be too concerned about it.
And how do you, the discussions we've had and the reasoning of us using either the fire code or, you know, some other precedent that was set by another township, how does that all enter into the public record at the point in time when you're arguing for us in front of a lawyer?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the proceeding is. You know, you could certainly start your preamble of your ordinance with how we got there, you know, based upon this information, and sort of lay it out publicly. You don't always see that, you know, sometimes you just keep the ordinance sort of basic, not a lot of information in it. Or if you end up having a conditional use hearing, something like that, and those questions can certainly be asked of the applicants. The township could have their own, you know, witness testify as to what's appropriate, the engineer, you know, give those reasons. Just to create the record.
Because the way I saw it, we said 40, we allowed, if there are conditions when they can't get it, we allow them to come back for, propose other options. So I guess I still don't know why that 40 wouldn't still be valid. Not that we're not gonna land on that eventually, but I don't know why we're going through this whole motion here, because it's not like we said it's gotta be 40 and you know, go bark at the moon if you want more than that. We're giving them options, and if we turned it down, it would be for valid reasons. It wouldn't be because we just didn't want more than 40. So I just don't know why that came up like that.
I mean, I feel like the general consensus last meeting was that we just didn't have a reason why there was 40, and we just wanted to have a reason. That's all. Like something that justified it. That was simply it. So.
Yeah, I had the same thought, but we're not saying 40 is too low, too high. We just want to have a reason that besides this. You said, Tom, you had said Adams Township has it on traffic.
Yeah, a couple municipalities have it on a traffic basis, and they list all of their roads by that basis. So it's local roads, collector road, material road, whatever those roads are, they have a number of homes that you're allowed on those. And they have a trip generation for each one.
And I think we determined that still needs to be updated.
Yeah.
In the township, so that's not a good basis for this.
The question I had though, I was looking at the fire code stuff, and they're like 30. Like their number is more than 30 units. That was lower than I had, so I didn't know.
The code is 100 is the 2021 code and 2024 code. It's come back to say for a housing plan, it's 100 units.
Okay.
There's been some references to the older code where in an older plan, they limit it to 30 because the infrastructure isn't there.
Okay.
So that's ultimately the appendix D6 of the International Fire Code is the one that defines that. So,
all right, so I'll go to D107.
So, housing development off of Scarlet Ridge Road, what would that road be? Is that a collector road?
It's probably a higher road based on the current traffic. And that's what we're trying to define with the township, is defining the road, defining the last traffic count that's available either through PennDOT or through the township to then list those roads by type.
Yeah, so I think what Mary's point is that we are trying to do that. I mean, I think you guys, you've got to identify what roads are collector roads, which ones are main roads, then you can do your traffic counts, then you can, you're not there yet. Mary, I mean, if you're going to wait for that, then,
So is it,
We've talked about getting that done, but I don't know how to initiate it. I don't think that's a planning commission thing. If it is, I'll recommend that we do it, but.
just to answer your question too, I got to before, my recollection you had the Jackson Township ordinance, which said 50 and two special entrance, whatever. And then you guys took out the special entrance. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember this. And then one of you said, let's make it 30. And then Bob Brennan said, make it 50. And then, I don't remember what the discussion was.
I said 40.
I think I said 37.
Okay. But I'm trying to answer the question, how you got to 40. But then you guys took a vote, discussed it, took a vote, and you said 40. So, I don't know if that holds up in court, Mr. Celeste.
I mean, again, it's what you could justify a record if somebody wants a modification, we have substantial evidence to support no modification before, on appeal, how does that look?
I mean, we're not, to get this through, I'm asking, and I'm just asking, I'm not proposing. Do we use a 40 to get this through so that the supervisors would have something to work with? And then whenever we do finally get all the information on the roads and we look to see what we need, how much traffic there's going to be, do we go back and fix this so that we're not going to be challenged? And I know we don't want to double back all the time, but is this a case where we may have to double back?
I think we have to double back both on this and the consent. I think it would be wise to do that. I mean, you don't have enough information to variance to make a call. So, as a resident, I recommend that you make a call.
Right.
But, and then get it, and then the supervisors might not agree. They may argue about it. But this one of them might want 100, I might say 30. And another super, so,
All we
I
can
think what's
do,
interesting with this is if you do have those modification criteria in there, you are picking a number, but there's a way around it. And if an applicant comes in, it's safe and it passes the engineer's muster and everybody else, then it's up to the township, but they may very well approve it and allow it through. So it's really, if you want less challenges, you got to be able to give and take. How good is the application, the presentation that they give, what's the criteria look like? If you pick a number, say you pick 40 and the township will not budge off 40, even when it's reasonable, then you're going to see challenges, you're going to see litigation. But, you have a well thought out board. I mean, they're going to think through these things, they're going to, conduct their hearings and, you'll see those come up and then certainly can modify down the road if you have to.
yeah, the only way I see it getting challenged is if we draw a hard line, there's no way to get a second egress exit in there. We draw
Right,
a
you
hard
shut
line
the
and
door.
say no.
Yeah.
Then it can be challenged, but
definitely be challenged after the variance is denied, right? Is that correct?
Well, I think they'd say that you're not even providing that. Here's our line in the sand and we're not going to budge from
But
it.
even if they say that, even if that's in the ordinance, people can still request a variance.
You certainly could.
Now, I think the issue would become if we deny the variance, right? Is that, I'm asking you, is that a correct statement?
Right, and that's where you're going to see the lion's share of litigation on any of these matters.
and there could be topography where now I guess the hard part comes in when it's obvious if he went through the adjacent farm to get to another road and we want him to do that, but that farmer or rather the property owner saying, I'm not selling, you're not coming through here, then you're at a standoff. It's
That's for the zoning hearing board, if I understand how the process works correctly. It's not.
If it's a saldo issue, the supervisor making the decision.
Okay, but we have that option as a supervisor. Okay, so I knew there was a way you could go, so, okay.
It's in the zoning ordinance, zoning hearing board.
Gosh,
Subdivision is.
well, no, okay, so we're not, so where is it, which one goes to the zoning ordinance? Is it the data centers or separate zoning ordinance?
Data center would be used, so it would be a zoning ordinance issue.
The single ingress egress are gonna make it a
It's
sound.
It's in part of saldo.
Okay.
You already have that in your saldo, and it's currently written that it's promoted that we have one entrance per subdivision. You basically would replace that section and put this section in.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll go with the supervisors. Now then, if we said hard no, that dismissed their right. If they can make a case. So thank you, comment.
So it still comes down to coming up with a number.
Is there a consistent number that we've seen in other ordinances? I heard 50, but that's,
Hardly anybody has it in their ordinance. So again, some people have densities, which again would be based on trip counts, which then you would know what your roads are. So to me, you're not there yet to be able to say 750 or 800, which seems to be the norm for that to warrant a second entrance. But you may have that information sooner than later.
So is that 800, 400 out and 400 in, or 800 out? So it'd actually be 1600.
Trips. So the trips are defined, the ITT says for a residential house, you have X amount of trips per day. So that's the easy part. It's defined by an agency that says, based on the use, this is the number of trips.
And the trip is
But a trip
from your house to the supermarket. That is,
and back.
and back is one trip.
Is 2 trips.
Oh, that's 2
They're
trips.
saying there's 10 trips a day per house.
Roughly, the number's 10 trips per house a day.
Okay.
So there's 124 homes, times that's 1,200, and like you said, that falls in with, the average seems to be 800.
Right.
So that would exceed, the current regular plan would exceed that if we have it in place. So I mean, that's another option.
But again,
What you said, the average is 10
well, 10 per house.
per house.
For townhouses, it's less. It's like 6 per townhouse because of, there's only usually 2 people. So the ITT says for multifamilies, it's low. So if you had sheets, it would be so many. If you had I mean, all of those are defined by the use types, and there's a lot of those already.
So if kind of a rule of thumb is 10 trips per house, an 800 trip, is that 80 houses? Am I doing the right math? Oh, it's
that
two.
would be 80 houses, yes. That would hit the limit.
Yes.
That's correct.
The 80 houses would be 80 trips, and if you had 750 or 800, you're talking 75 million.
Okay. So that is more than the 40.
Correct. And it's still less than the 100. To me, the 100's your
100's awful high.
is your given because you have a code that says if it exceeds that. So to me, you wouldn't want to go over that.
I mean, personally, I think 80's too many too, but, and I like the 40 number, but to avoid a lot of conflict, do we want to go 50, 60? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you look at those numbers, 40 is less than half of what the standard recommendation out there is.
Yeah.
So that's a significant decrease to me, where if I'm a developer, like, that's a significant, like, that's discernible. Like, so I don't know, that's where my concern came in, is like, hey, like, the more we've talked about this, and the more I've been involved with this, the things about the challenges seem to be more of a pain in the butt, and the more you read about it, like, so I don't feel like
It can also cost the township money too, doesn't it?
But at the same point, like, I feel the Wrigley one should have had a second entrance. Like, I would definitely prefer the Wrigley to have had a second entrance. But that would have been at what, if we said, that would have been like 720 trips that we figured.
6 times 124.
120 something, 120, yeah. So, like, I think that's too many. So I'd be in favor of a number less than that. So, like, I'd be okay with 50 to 60. Like, I think that's not, it's still half, but it's not less than half. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think a number like that, we can argue more that that's reasonable.
And there's nothing saying, like you said before, once we have the data from the roads, that we can't change that as we continue to go through this, if it needs to be decreased because our numbers say it can be. But I just think picking a number that's that far below the average is potentially opening you up for something. Like, my understanding is you can't make an ordinance to prohibit someone from developing just because you don't want someone to be here. Like, there has to be a reason behind it. And if it's not logical, then you're, I don't know, the solicitor may say differently, but my understanding is they have grounds for, like, suing you for that. Same with the data center. We can't, like, say we just don't want data centers. We have to say we don't want an industry that's gonna act like a data center. As goofy as that is, but I mean, I think that's how people look at it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'd be at number wise.
60?
55, I don't care. Like, anything, 60 is my high. 60 is my high.
60.
Yeah. I'm 50 or 60. I think right. I don't want to be less than half is too far.
You know,
in my opinion.
I also look at it, we're more of a rural township. We're further away from emergency services.
Yeah.
So the, fire department or EMS has to come in. It's a further distance than if they're in Cranberry or, Zealy or something like that. So the response times take longer. And so there, I think you knock the number down a little bit more. That's how I look at it. You know, I guess we have one more chance at this with our full group.
We
All we
can't,
have to do is pick a number.
we can't actually vote on this tonight,
No,
correct?
we have to wait till our next.
We just need a number.
We have to have a number.
We can vote on it at our next official meeting. So we could propose something and then let the other folks that aren't here look at our decision. And then we can talk about it at the next meeting and change it again if we have to. And then we
Can we do that at that meeting? We can change it at that.
and then we can vote on it.
Do we want to have a number to put out there that the other ones can look at?
Yeah, that's what I would like to do tonight.
I propose 50 then. That'd be my number, if I was saying. That would be
I was
personally.
thinking 50.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that too. That's half of the fire code. Again, we'll use the,
You said justifiable because of where we are,
Mhm.
is why it's so much lower, but it's not, you know, so low that it's prohibitive, I think, so.
Plus Jackson Township had it at one point.
Is that maybe why they took it out?
did they, you don't know?
I'll ask.
Mhm.
That's all right.
One of two things happened. They got their traffic studies and decided to go with the traffic, or they got challenged and pulled it out. I still don't think you get challenged unless the developer you shut him off from all other alternatives. You know, if you let him put in a boulevard entrance, if you let him put in an emergency entrance or something along those lines, we're going to accept that. But if you say no, 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 then it's going to come back.
I mean, I think a lot of the properties they'd probably have two entrances anyhow.
I don't know. Let's just look at Wrigley. I don't think they could put two entrances in there,
That's one that can't.
or they'd have a pretty steep road up by the log cabin.
No.
They'd have to be on top of the hill for sight distance, and it would be a challenge.
Or redesign it and get an agreement with.
And I don't know the property that, Whitestown Road, but on Scott Ridge Road, a lot of the properties you could have two entrances.
Do they ever, the developers ever collude, so to speak? So this guy puts one entrance in, this guy puts one entrance in the property, and then they agree to connect it at some point so that becomes, in that plan, becomes two entrances?
So they would determine that there's property that maybe is going to be available, maybe it's a secondary farm, so they know, and they have talks with that person, so they'll leave a stub in to connect to that, and then when they build the first one, then by then they probably acquire the second one. We've seen that happen.
Okay.
So it's ultimately there's a plan, but it's, they won't say this is all we're going to do, and developers generally don't agree with one another, so they compete. But I think if we had a plan in place and we knew that something was a potential, we would allow that.
Although I do believe the way we started on this was we weren't going to allow them to give us a promise. That, they wanted to put them in. Oh, we promise we'll put that in on phase 3. That wasn't gonna work so well because it may not never happen.
I mean, Arden, for example, the last phase of Arden, there was talks of taking the Arden apartments and connecting that road into Arden so you would have secondary access. The problem with that is it came out in a really bad location on 19, so you didn't have sight distance. So there would be a right turn only to get out. And the zoning wasn't in place for that to happen, so they let it go. But that was a different developer that approached the township to say, hey, can we do this? And they couldn't make it work. So.
Connie.
So just so you know, on Scenic Ridge, that never originally had the third phase on. Okay, so there was only the one entrance and everything right there on Southview. So that was originally all over 100 homes as well. That's bad sight distance because when Eagle Flight originally was supposed to develop that in the early 2000s, 2008, I think it was, they were told by PennDOT that they were supposed to shave off the whole 19 there to help with the sight line, as well as add a left-hand turn lane into Southview and a right-hand turn lane in there as well. Then the the Erwin, I can't remember her name, Black, that passed away, and the kids had sold off that property that developed third phase of Scenic Ridge, which is on Saltworks, so I've been allowed to connect that. But over 30 years ago, back in '93, when they were to set up Farmers Woods, that was never connecting to Saltworks. The side where Saltworks is, it was going to be the whole house and all that kind of stuff, and everything was going to be exiting out down below. And that had changed so many times, I couldn't even keep up with it, how that development changed. But yeah, the only way they got the road in there was because, they agreed with somebody to put the road into the well pad back there.
I think you brought up just a good point, or something I thought about. You know, if we require the second entrance, and that second entrance bumps out onto a township road, which is not well maintained, maybe doesn't even meet current design standards, but they've met that criteria by having a second entrance. How do we address that? Because now I'm thinking of my road, Schmidt, and not that anybody's going to do that, but all of a sudden you've got, this second entrance onto a road like Schmidt, which is not designed to even carry, 9 homes, let alone another 2,000. When they say this is what you require, and we've met that. Who fixes
So the
that
developer is
road?
only responsible for what they own on that road. So if they own a 200-foot swatch on that road, then that 200 feet on their side would be brought up to township standard.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have half of the road that's a 25-foot right of way that's got a 28-foot lane, so it's got a 14-foot lane. The township would be responsible for the other. What was done on Stone Church was the township mediated that with the developer to say, okay, there really isn't a need for this. So they improved the whole road, but they made it narrower. They cut and shaved down the bend on the road. The developer did all of that in agreement with the township. So it's give and take. The ordinance is there to at least say you've got to do half of this.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's an off-site improvement, you can't mandate to a developer that you need to do it now because of where they are and that's the only access. They need to be willing to contribute something towards that.
If that was the case, then why wasn't Saltworks completely, not the whole way back, but at least back to Spring Lane is on the Scenic Ridge side, because that property goes over to Spring Lane. And then Martin Drive, or Martin's Woods, that goes back there back to Stokel's, and Stokel's technically was part of Martin's Woods too. But they stopped right there at Martin Drive, and I can't remember the name coming up on Scenic Ridge.
So Scenic Ridge had in the developer's agreement the option to either build the road wider or contribute funds to the township, and the township decided to contribute funds to the township to do that. And the same with Ordinance.
So everybody behind that then suffers because the township agreed to that, instead of forcing the developer to do what they needed to do.
Well, the township determined what that cost was, and the developer gave the township those funds. The township could then make that road wider.
But the township hasn't done anything on that road.
Correct. But
So what happened to all the funds?
It's in a traffic fund where it was required to be placed. So it's in a traffic fund that the township has.
They
What's
fixed.
that, you know what that called it?
I don't know, it was,
Sorry.
$650, $850 per house.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's pretty low.
Thanks, Tom.
So ultimately, the developer's agreement spells all of that out. The ordinance says you've got to improve it. So.
Okay. So if we were to do that traffic study and identify certain classification of roads, would we be able to prohibit them from getting onto certain roads? Church Lane or whatever I'm told is pretty bad, the road I'm on, just because they can't handle the traffic.
So you would mandate that secondary access couldn't be on local road. It would have to be on a collector road. It would have to be a collector road or above.
Mm-hmm.
So you can certainly mandate that.
I think that's something we should consider
Right.
also, because we could dump that whole housing plan out onto a road like Saltworks, beyond where Arden is, which
Well,
is.
the only reason Saltworks is the way it is now But that road is not designed or built to handle more than 1,100 cars a day running 30 to 50, 60 mile an hour on that road.
But that's what they're saying. They're
Yeah,
saying
I know, but that's what.
you would have to wait to do that.
If this would have been, taken care of at that time, we would never had those two developments connected to that road. But that whole thing got thrown out the window.
Well, so that's a question, you wanna make that part of this ordinance, or you wanna do it in the second version that we're gonna do?
I think we gotta do second, because we still need the traffic
Yeah,
study.
we have 30% of the data gathered for the classifications. We don't have the traffic counts to support the full numbers, because you don't wanna have a certain road with a higher classification with low numbers, vice versa. So
Have you been commissioned, is Gannon Fleming commissioned from the township to do that traffic study? Or?
the road foreman is gathering that data.
Okay,
We have a spreadsheet that lists all of the data that we had previously for every road in the township, so we're just having that data.
okay, so he's collecting it, and then once that data's in, then we'll try to determine what we'll classify the roads.
The township, Ed has now taken that to a living document to know when the last improvements were, the details that were never there because they were stored in somebody's head, which were always there until that person left. So now it's being put down as when the improvements are, what the improvements were, stuff like that. So there's a massive spreadsheet that's working in the works at doing that, so.
Okay, good.
That's what we should have done last workshop. We had like a whole screen with all the colors.
Right.
It's in the copy. If you want, it's in the rest of the planning commission.
I think we should have that. I mean, it just helps us.
I'll try to send you that. You have one document, is that document you can send by email?
Yeah, we've got options for that.
So we wanna take a look at the rest of this, I think they made a couple changes to it, just language wise, to make sure now when we meet next week, or next time, we're all like, hey, everything's good, we have to vote on a number.
Right.
Just to make sure we're good to go. So I believe the blue is what was changed. That was highlighted stuff on there, is that right, Tom?
I'm gonna ask the solicitor to go through and tell us what they changed.
So I wasn't at the last meeting, exactly what was it? I'm happy to, give opinions on this particular person.
Yeah, I don't know. So Patrick was here last week, is that right? For Michelle?
It was just some language stuff I think he was tightening up.
In, C2, the first bullet, the developer evidences a topography hardship in their submitted plans. I mean, it seems very vague. I feel like topography is generally an issue in the Pittsburgh area. Should we define that better? Is there a way to define that better? Maybe, I don't know.
We've had developers give us maps of what the slopes were in their plans to show defined areas if you have higher slopes. But then again, the question is it, greater than the 10% your limitation in your road ordinances is 10 to 12% grade is for a roadway. So the roadway were to exceed that, to me, you would have a topography issue. So that's a definable based on
Based on the
current other ordinance as far as the
the
limitation
slope per road.
the grade of the roadway. So to me, if they couldn't do a 10% grade on a roadway to get a secondary access, I would think that would warrant a justifiable reason.
Would you like topography hardship, or would you prefer to use like the NPC language for variance and sort of just use the unique physical circumstances? Which is kind of similar, not
I
exactly
think
the
the
same.
more you define it, the better you are, because topography is open. Somebody, my interpretation of topography issue with the landowners could be completely different. So, but again, topography, to me, if there's an issue is we can't put a road in because of topography. topography, then to me that means that the road would exceed a 10% grade. And so I think it would be easy to throw that grade in, it's in your ordinance, and so if you can't do it, there's an issue. And the grade would dictate that.
Mhm.
So the only way you can do this is a 14% grade, which is too steep. So I think that's definable. You know, to me,
So you put the 10% grade in that,
instead of topography, you know, if a roadway
Exceeds.
the secondary access were to exceed a 10% grade,
okay.
then you would consider, you know, waiver for that.
That works for me. I mean, is there something more general? You know, if the, I mean, they can always, a lot of times they can do cuts, they can move earth. And
Correct, they could,
You know.
and that's what I mean, and you could, the more general part would be if the roadway doesn't meet the township standard, and that way you don't have a number in potentially two places, you can just say if it doesn't meet the township standard, by excavating or filling the grade, then that would be considered. So that gives them the option that they would cut it, they would show a cut fill, how they would do it, you know,
Mhm.
and see what happens.
That's where I'd like to go with this, a little bit more generic, that gives them more options.
Well, it's still just considered, like, if they come up with an alternative, it's not guaranteed.
Mhm.
So it's still good before the supervisor to decide.
Okay.
It's just saying they have the right to, if they have those issues, they can have it considered something else that way, right? That's my reading of that.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, I mean, their goal is if to provide two entrances, two access points.
yeah.
But if you can't, so this is giving them the out, so you're defining what those outs are.
Yes, but they're still reviewable by the
Oh, yeah.
supervisor to make sure that they're okay with whatever, even though they have an out.
Yes.
It's not like, get out of jail free card, it's like just that.
Right.
You have an option.
Yeah, I don't wanna do
Give a
it,
chance.
so now.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. The plan does not allow for access to other arterial or collector roads. And what did you call the roads which we would find to be inadequate?
well, it's a local road. So we
Local.
have those defined, you have quite a few of those, so.
Is that something that should
They're-
that be written in here, or is that covered somewhere else?
I believe you have that covered, it's already in your salary.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about it sometime or another.
Yeah, you have local collector, major, arterial, so.
So on a C1, we'd put, that would have the 50 housing units?
If that's the number we decide.
If that's the number we decide on. Okay, so then I found something else on, oh gosh, I just had it. Oh, on D1, it has 40 units. If we decide on 50, that should be 50 also, correct?
Yeah.
And what's on the last page here that we need?
Those were the comments on the before.
Yeah, those were the comments that were there from last time.
Oh, okay.
Things, so we didn't forget. So the cul-de-sac number's gonna, be impacted also by that? By that
I mean,
50?
I mean, right now, the cul-de-sac is defined by the length and the number of homes. So, you know, cul-de-sac and a development are potentially two different things, like, Page Place isn't a cul-de-sac. It only has one access, so it depends on how you define it. We'll eventually determine whether those are adequate or not.
Because it was brought up that, multi-use cul-de-sacs limited to 20 homes. I don't know if we have any cul-de-sacs that would exceed 50, but, you know, we want to limit cul-de-sacs to 50 or even lesser amount. That's in the Saldo, I guess.
Correct.
And that's where it should be. It should stay in the Saldo. Okay.
Yeah, you can have, right now, it's in your zoning ordinance on densities. And then the saldo defines, like, the length of the cul-de-sac is the saldo requirement. But the zoning ordinance defines the number of homes on a cul-de-sac. And that's something that'll need to be reviewed to see whether you can, that's the proper place for that.
Zoning's density and the number of homes. And what was the Saldo?
Saldo is the length of the cul-de-sac.
Is what?
The
Length.
Length.
I think it's 600 feet. I believe that was based on not having fire hydrants and potable water available, so assuming the truck was at the road, that was the hose line.
Okay.
So that's, I don't know that that's still applicable, since most of these will be in a defined area, it's not a private road, so, like that.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, another question for the solicitor.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what you just brought up, if, our zoning ordinance states 20 homes per cul-de-sac, is there a reason the zoning ordinance could be modified to say X number of homes per single or egress?
How
As
is
opposed to the
zoning-
south.
It's a limitation in the zoning ordinance to 20?
It's, every one of our zoning districts has a limitation of 20 homes
Yeah.
per cul-de-sac, which would seem to be very logical. The next thing right after that would be X number of homes on a single egress.
Right.
Exactly. Is there, that way it's outside the Saldo, which it already currently is for the cul-de-sac.
Right.
Is there, I'm asking, but it's a question, is there any particular reason to just keep the zoning ordinance in there?
I think as long as it's clear, but what do we already have in, this is zoning?
Yes.
Number of 20 units are permitted on a cul-de-sac in the district. That covers, that's an R2.
Yeah,
All
it's
all
in
residential
it's
districts,
in
it's in most of the districts, but not all.
What's missing?
Mixed use.
No, it's a mixed use. I'll show it to you if you want. What's a mixed use?
If it's in all the residential districts, you can have it just in zoning. Or just keep it consistent between the two.
Find it.
It was missing in one of them.
I know it's a mixed use, because I was surprised that it didn't come up when we were.
The regular is not a cul-de-sac.
I know, but I'm just surprised. But regardless, the question to the solicitor was, could it be just an amendment to the zoning?
It could be, as long as it's provided for.
Would that ease the process? Or make no difference?
I think probably make no difference as long as there's consistency between the two documents.
I'm just saying, it seems like a logical spot right after.
Yeah.
20 homes, or 20 dwellings, cul-de-sac. X number of homes.
Right. Yeah, you could certainly leave them together. Yeah, cul-de-sac, but the plan has to happen. And with the 50.
Outside of our zoning ordinances, there's no definition for cul-de-sac, even though it specifically states
Okay.
no more than 20 homes on a cul-de-sac.
We don't know what that is.
Yes,
So
I just thought I'd bring that up.
What did Merriam-Webster say then?
It's in the South, the cul-de-sac definition, the South.
Yeah.
So is there a consensus on where this change should go? We're planning to put it in, revise our saldo. Right, but is it better to go into zoning, or what's cleaner, what's easier for what our immediate goal is?
Again, for me, it's just consistency. I mean, I think you can put it in there if you want a reference to it. I don't think you have to since it's in the zoning ordinance. But as long as if it's 20 in the zoning, it's gotta be 20 in the zoning.
Well, our intent here is to make a revision. If the data centers is in the zoning, is it easier to just make two zoning changes? One for the egress, and one for the data centers, and have it there instead of changing the saldo.
I think it's easier, it seems logical to me that you guys have to make a recommendation to the supervisor. I know I would recommend the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, if it doesn't matter, and we know we're gonna fix the saldo later, or we're gonna fix the zoning later, rather than have a zoning and a saldo change, we could have two zoning changes. That's, it seems more efficient. Would you agree, Tom?
It could be, I don't know legally, the NPC would dictate what you can have in a zoning ordinance and what you can have in a subdivision ordinance. So I think that would need to be reviewed once it gets to the point where you have in the final form this to place where it needs to be.
Okay.
I think typically you would see the access in saldo, but yeah, I'd have to double check to see if you pull it out and put it into zoning.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what the best way to do that is.
I mean, ultimately, you're gonna have, I think, changes to both.
Right.
Because your access overlay says you wanna combine all of these and have one entrance, but your saldo says you only should have one entrance. So I think ultimately, you're gonna change both. It's just a matter of which has more teeth to put it in.
It sounds like, to me, it goes into saldo. Zoning would be a shortcut. As our initial step, is this first, first in the box.
It's really not a setback, it's really not a use. As far as the legal, usually the zoning says this is what you can do here, and saldo says this is how you do it. So it seems to be more of the how than the other one, but again, that'll be the legal review once we get to that stage.
Okay. Well, for now then, I think we keep it in the saldo.
And you're gonna create this ordinance, you're gonna find what it is, legal's gonna say this is what it should be, and everything else, and what changes because of it.
Okay. So we have collectively agreed on 50?
Yes.
And that change goes in the saldo. Does anybody believe Mr. Brennan's gonna have an issue with 50 since he had an issue with 40?
He can still be voted down. If you got the
Is there any way we have to get the logic and our input on why we picked 50 for some future court case? Or, because no one will remember by then, half of us probably won't even be here by then.
I think the big, excuse me. I like the big one that you brought up, safety. That it's a rural township and just.
Do we add that language into the ordinance? It says, whereas because we're of this, because we're that, there's a lot of that stipulation at the beginning.
A lot of that's already in the
Yeah, there are a lot of health, safety, welfare.
There's a lot of safety things
Statements in there.
here.
Okay.
But I mean, I think that's.
You think that's adequate?
I think it is. I think it depends on. Again, if somebody wants to come in, then what's the substantial evidence that they should not get the single access that they can say it's, otherwise safe.
Okay. So make sure we're covered. All right. We have everything we need on this changes, I think?
I think we're okay with everything else, right?
Okay.
Just changing those two things.
Since we've got a small group, we don't have Bob, who I usually ask to lead all of our saldo changes.
He did a lot of the data center stuff too. We did that workshop on that. But I think that's next, right? We need to do that. Because there's nothing. We have nothing. we're not that at all. That's not even a change. That's a whole new thing. So I do think that's important.
Okay.
I
So-
think we're relatively close, right? So, I don't see why we can't have that one ready for our next official meeting. Like, we'll have this next meeting, and then we'll have our workshop, and by the end of June, we'd probably be able to pretty much put that out.
So this one will be ready to vote on at
Yeah,
the,
this month.
Yeah,
the Tuesday meeting, right?
Yeah, it's usually the official.
Confusing.
But unless we have other stuff come up for that, we can talk about, we can check what we're doing and ready to talk about that at that meeting.
Right.
So,
Were you aware of any other things that will be before the planning commission? Any new proposals, any preliminaries, or?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, log cabin would be the only other one, but I haven't seen it yet, so.
Do we need anything from Curtis, Graff?
You taking
We
care of
did it.
it.
We're done, okay, we're all
It's out
done
of
with
your-
that?
It's out of your hands when you go to the supervisor.
Okay.
So. No, it's the only one I can think of that's out there that we've heard anything about, so.
Was there a reason why they couldn't grant him preliminary and final approval the way we were able to do that?
They needed two separate motions, but they only did one.
So technicality.
So then, yeah, next month, this month will be in the final.
Okay. All right, with that then, I'm gonna suggest that we adjourn for the evening. Oh, you got,
Back to the data centers here. It seems like every week they're running more about, some of the data centers want to put an on-site energy generation plants on them, either natural gas or nuclear. Is that going to be addressed in ordinance?
We did talk about it.
the big discussion you guys had on data centers, I was not at that meeting, so whatever you can remember, please convey to Tony, because I'll learn too.
Power supply requirements. And I wrote further discussion for 2 uses on 1 parcel. Because I think that's what we were talking about, that I guess they currently say you can't have more than 1 use of parcels. I think that's as far as we got.
Okay.
We were gonna further discuss.
I think, Tony, we're probably gonna defer to some pretty standard language that we're finding for other ordinances in other townships. You know, as we develop that further into the future, we may add more specifics. Okay. Anything else? All right, then. I'm gonna suggest we adjourn for the evening, and we'll pick this up at our next meeting. Thank you, everyone.